As to whether she was speaking to the February minutes or the more recent minutes.
It's the May 17th.
The March 17th.
Right.
Happy to review and revise those if you guys wish to table them.
And February also.
Yeah, so February is I'm still reviewing those and didn't get it done
Okay.
in this meeting.
Well, we approved the minutes for the April 1st meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Larry. I'll second it.
Kathy Clater,
Yes.
Larry Doss,
Yes.
Ellen Stein,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson. Yes. Gary Oliver.
Yes.
So now we have invoice for approval. Insurance.
Can I have public comment? The quorum. The bill is dated August 5th, 2024. Do we have a current bill? And the reason I'm asking is because I want to know if there's any late fees or cancellation notices since this is workers' comp.
But then it shows down below workers' compensation 2425.
Right, but you have to pay it ahead of time. I was a claims adjuster at State Fund, so I kind of know these things. Decorum,
What was, is this the only invoice we have? That's it, this is the one that sent us,
The most recent one.
most recent.
and does this include all employees, not just the volunteers? Because when Marley established this, she had everyone covered for it, so I just want to, I'm just curious if that still stands today with this bill. They didn't cancel you in 8 months?
No.
Wow. I would have.
Would you guys,
Decorum.
so, our workers' compensation, is put together by, a cooperative or an NGO, a volunteer, or maybe a joint powers, or volunteer firefighting departments across the state. So they're a governing body, and then they contract out claims and management. And so, you know, they are advocates for our employees and our firefighters and for districts like us. So they've been lenient. One of the challenges that we had when I started was that invoices were routed to different places, too many different places. So it was pretty easy to get overlooked sometimes. And so as I've been here, I've been trying to set up a normal accounts payable routine where things get before the bookkeeper first, and then we can set up managerial, sort of managerial accounting. We're not just accounting for our bills after the fact, those sorts of things. And that's been a challenge in numerous cases with, so I'm trying to consolidate all of our accounts payable, you know, a lot of things that district pays on an annual or quarterly basis. And so I don't quite have a grasp on the full vendor list yet. Regarding the coverage under this, so in the past, the compensation is, you know, has a governing body of leadership from firefighting departments across the state, and then they contract it out to sort of a firm that does receiving. So they're advocates of, you know, our volunteers and our employees. So with workers' compensation at the district, you know, each employee relative to the risk level has a different sort of rate. The highest for and then that rate is applied against the salary. So if we have our employees, all of them categorized as safety personnel, as with the fire department, then we pay higher workers' compensation costs, even if those folks are not at risk. So, for instance, our office receptionist periodically is served on the volunteer fire department. She also gets paid. So we would have to pay a safety personnel rate against her earnings. And so, like anything, we want to look with look in a little more detail how we're protecting our employees and volunteers, managing risk and keeping costs for them. So, one of the things that we dealt with in the past is, you know, that situation where everybody's getting applied the safety personnel rate versus clerical rate versus municipal worker versus our wastewater operator. And so one of the things that we can do to control costs is to ensure that folks that have a mostly clerical or administrative duty classified, you know, as much under workers' compensation. From an operational agility standpoint, it makes sense for us to have as much cross-training and, readiness, preparedness. If we could afford it, it would be great to have every single employee also a volunteer firefighter. But again, we have to, the decision for a general manager is how to manage that risk, manage the risk appropriately and manage the cost appropriately. And so that's sort of some of the background about our workers' compensation. Same thing with our other insurance coverage. It would behoove us to look at things in a little more detail and see what we could do, maybe shop around for other coverage. There's other coverage out there for special districts we could look at.
Is this when you have more time?
Or hopefully more help.
Yeah.
But, so that's the background, and this is just one of those, this is an instance where, just tracking down the invoice. So how do we handle that? We now have, we're trying to route all invoicing to both the office staff and the bookkeeper. So the bookkeeper gets it immediately, enters in the county system, and the office staff get it, they get purchase orders set up if necessary, get it in front of me for accounts payable. But yeah, really trying to capture the invoices, get them into an AP report, and go from there.
Do we have a motion to approve the bill?
You got it.
You got it? Okay, Larry?
Kathy Clear,
Yes.
Ron Johnson,
I'm gonna stay on that one.
Jerry Oliver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now we need a report from the fire chief.
All right, so last month we had 4 medicals. We had a traffic collision resulting in a lost person. And then we had 1 debris burning that we were dispatched to for investigation. That actually led to, the person we think was burning was not burning, it was her neighbor. We did have the community spaghetti dinner last month. Thanks to the public, everybody came out, it was a great event. The loop collected $923 in donations, which we really appreciate. And then, on a more sorrow note, the traffic collision that resulted in a lost person, unfortunately, he did pass away. I want to remind people that when the roads are icy or it's dark, please call 911 if you're in an accident. The result of the lateness of us getting to him at 1:30 in the morning was due to him calling friends and neighbors to get him out. With 911 calls, it gets dispatched immediately to the appropriate personnel. And then that's all. Coming up here, probably May 1st, we will be having burn permits going in effect. Please go on CAL FIRE website, go through your burn permits. It's completely free. It's about 2-3 minute video.
If you burn in a fire pit, you don't have to have a permit, right?
Yes.
At any given time, you're allowed to have a warming fire or a cooking fire.
Okay.
I do recommend small burn pits for warming fires. The
All right.
rose ready and shovel.
I met with Cal Fire the other day, and the permits are online early now. Since they are gonna send out notices starting this year to those who had burn permits.
Notices have already gone out via email.
Right, but I bet they're doing it on the website, so the people that have already applied last year, they're getting notices ahead of time to do your burn permits.
Yep.
And that in the videos, they are requiring your warming fire permits. You can have it under your burn permit, otherwise they want you to get a campfire.
Correct. Same with Forest Service.
Yeah, they're asking for 2 permits.
Next one. Board members report, meeting procedures. Do we have to read this stuff, Vance, or do people have copies of it, or?
Well, it was,
Maybe for us?
yeah, it was brought up by a board member, for discussion. And presumably to discuss it, just, sorry. I don't wanna. So it was added to the agenda for the board member reports. Several of those items I think are worth revisiting. I would agree are worth revisiting for this board of directors to see if they would like some changes. And so any specific changes or changes, should be requested, and then I would be directed to amend the policies or ordinance and bring them back before you. And it's probably, it's also, of course, would be, worthwhile to, just reapprise ourselves of the procedures that are on file. Sorry, did you steal your,
No, that, you did exactly what I was gonna suggest anyway.
I think that anything
And
that you want to strike,
explains, which will also go to one of my other ones here when we get to it. Which is, policy 5015. Robert Rules of Order also explains the teleconference, so that we won't have that same issue that we had back in February, that people, when they Zoom, it'll be spelled out exactly how Zoom meetings, if you're gone as a board member.
Oh, yeah.
So it will all tie together into one loop, one aspect. So I would like to combine, we can combine those two, because it was resolution 2024-04 is. If that's the one where, you changed it to those, but I'd like to see it changed back to Robert Rules of Order. If that was a resolution, that was done May 17, 2024. And that will also go with, which is all right, our policy 202.060. Will all fall in line. Also, we will take care of that issue there for attendance. The only thing that we'll have to change, resolution there will be because of the 86, I have 86, I'll get it for 8. Yeah, 648. You no longer have to post, according to the laws, a agenda item behind you, take a photo, which was in our policies a long time ago. It's not required anymore because Zoom, they can see where you are, you're talking, you're voting, you're doing, everything as if I wasn't here. It's not, you're not absent. You're actually taking part, you're part of the conversation, you're part, and that's in the bylaws there, so it would all go together and tie in 50.
And so there are several recent laws
There's
passed.
5 laws that I found that, this one took effect, January 1st, 2024. But there's several, I've got like 7 pages of laws that'll back up your teleconference and your Zoom meetings. And the reason that they put those, I'm reading in the procedures, is if something goes down and you can't, then the meeting is supposed to be postponed or held kind of until the other person or notified. And the other one is that you are supposed to be notified as soon as possible. You know, not 1 minute before the meeting or 2 minutes.
Okay.
So that's it, that's also in there, that they're to give you, notice.
In general, and this was partly due to remote, governing remotely during the pandemic, is that there have been several state laws that have come about to adapt to teleconference and Zoom meeting procedures. The attorneys said the attorneys advised that, our policy could be just to comply with existing state law and.
Either way, I was just going with what is on the books,
Yeah.
not trying to change or circumvent anything, just add to it.
Yeah,
But if you wanted to state that, then we're governed under.
I think it's just something that we need to clarify, given the new state law surrounding Zoom meetings, and it's just new procedures adapting to the technology.
Because we don't really have to have a Zoom meeting.
I won't say, I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that, in order to have open meetings during lockdowns and things, when things, people still needed to make decisions,
You mean during the pandemic?
It all started during the pandemic. And actually, the change that law this year too, that you can only do it twice a year
Okay,
via Zoom, depending on how many meetings you have a year.
meaning representatives can only attend twice a year via Zoom.
Via Zoom.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
if you have 12 meetings a year. If you have less meetings a year, that number obviously goes down.
okay, well, regardless, I was happy to put it on the agenda because I think our ordinance and policies are a little out.
Yeah.
So it's worth researching and trying to find the simplest way to update.
Okay.
Where are we now with your stuff? Are you done with your, is this your stuff that we're doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other one I'd like to see updated is, 48,
Okay.
which we've run into that resolution 2022-03. Should go back, if you dig, let's see, I can give you the old, my research, the old. If you go back to the original policy, which was done in 2022, 48, and just adopt that one back and take the current and dismiss it. And I can give you all these copies if you need them.
Yeah, I mean, I would need.
Because what it states is that every board member should have the right to talk to council. Okay, confidentiality, I've been through that, is,
Well, we did have it where everyone could talk to general counsel and everyone talked to general. Yeah.
that's what this is, but
Right.
the new policy that went in last year, you had to ask permission from the chair, or you have to ask permission from the general manager.
Well, it was
That should not exist
Yeah, it was
because,
given to a lot of people in it, and obviously it was abused, and you can tell by our attorney bills.
correct, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it is supposed to strictly business.
Yeah.
It should be, you should have the opportunity to, if you need to, you should be able to call. If you don't call.
Right.
And I'll ask, well, I think I'll defer because we discussed that in,
All right.
maybe we can talk about that one later. Yes.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is new business expenditure authorization.
Sorry.
Second, yeah,
What?
I need a motion.
Oh, you made a
Second.
motion, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Please restate the motion.
You state the motion. What was it?
Motion is to revert back to, Robert Rules of Order, or Rules of Order, change the resolution.
You need a motion? Do we need a motion?
And a second.
Second, I don't know.
Kathy Clater,
Yes.
Larry Doss,
I'll abstain.
Ellen Stelling,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Jerry Oliver,
No, abstain.
The next thing on the agenda was the 2025.
Well, Mr. Johnson, Director Johnson wanted to discuss that, the previous policy to include multiple board members. And also he wanted to limit the decrease the spending limit. So I would invite him to propose to you guys what, how that should be approached. Before we move on to considering the resolution, because we can always amend the resolution and the policy as like presented. It's just to present you guys something.
Can we have public comment on it? Okay. Does this also include credit cards, or is that a different resolution and policy? Okay.
I think it would be with anything, isn't it, Vince?
So, yes, so the previous policy was established, by Carrie and Ted and the previous board. And that was good because it established some controls. It's the simplest way to establish controls. Well, the new policy as presented, is actually relates to the function of our banking system, which will require another person to log in and approve the transactions over a certain amount. And the reality, and you know, we get customer requests all the time, residents request all the time, when are we gonna get online bill pay? When are we, and the reality is that, most transactions are, you know, processed electronically. So we have a small credit card, that, you know, or we have a credit card with a limit of $3,500, I think. That's the only one I'm authorized to use. And that's how we pay for Zoom and other and our business software technology. So it's really not about the method, it's really about the amount. And it also dovetails into the functionality of the banking system, which requires, you know, if there's an initiator who will request a transaction and an approver logs in and reviews it, and you can set it 3 layers. You know, you set it to where you can have the GM and 2 board members, or the fire chief and 2 board members, depending on the amount, just relative to the signing authority, the amount. You have different levels of signing authority.
So on the credit card, we only have one that is kept in the office, or is there more than one?
Well, there are more than one. I'm not authorized signers. I haven't, there are credit lines that Marley and Mike established, in the past. They aren't being used to my knowledge. I've spoke with the banking administrators, and they said that if they were passed by, you know, there were appropriate resolutions received from them, but I haven't pursued it further, just out of time scarcity.
Okay.
These expense authorization, I'm mainly concerned with managing our operating checking accounts. We do need to follow up on, the signing, of those other lines.
This is what we have in place now as far as approving.
No, that's
That's the
proposed.
old one, that's the old one.
Basically what it is,
He made up.
basically what it is now, as Connie's pointed out, it's $2,500 with a board signature, anything, over 2,500 is submitted to the board for approval. And they should contain 2 authorized signatures and require, approval of the board. Well, everybody, we need those two authorized signers need to be registered with the bank. They need your signature cards, and then the other aspect is, depending on the limit, you know, how we set the limits, you guys could be in the office every day. Or we could go to the board, or we could not, we could have to go to a board meeting, to pay every bill. So we have to find some middle ground between the controls, we have to get everybody registered with our banking system. And see, we didn't have to do any of this when the county was had the treasury. When all of this should have been decided and delineated before that decision was made, by the previous board and the general manager that assumed control of the treasury. So, in a sense, we have to find a middle ground between and set our controls for what's a high enough authorization to continue to do business and not fall into arrears, you know, because we have to go to a board meeting for every approval, or, and also understanding that we need to have at least 3 board members, or at least 2 board members available to sign and readily accessible to sign. So again, these are all sort of, when things were handled by warrant, with the county, it was less of an issue, still slow to pay the bills. And so my understanding is that part of the rationale that the district assumed the treasury was for convenience and to pay bills expediently. And obviously that didn't happen. But we do need to have some logical expense authorization policy that aligns with the functionality of our banking system. And that it's better that policy exists across all of our financial instruments that we use for purchasing. You know, as a whole can of worms, they should have laid out detailed policy before taking on the treasury.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now, we're slow to pay bills still, and increasingly we'll be paying bills electronically. And using the fraud prevention services that includes all those controllers or approvers in the banking system. So if we set it up appropriately, it requires all those things. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. It's okay, it's not you, I have a sort of a earphone going.
For transparency's sake, can you tell me who the current fire designee is? Or the fire chief?
I'm the only officially affiliated signer for the accounts right now is me. I need 2 other board members, at least 2 board members, to be signers and approvers on the accounts in accordance with a stated policy. And so right now, we haven't been spending the fire money because I was the only signer and we weren't approving anything.
So if you pass this resolution, you're passing it without knowing who the designee is?
No.
Will you be telling us when that's determined, or?
So, here, sorry. Here's the policy by which, this is the signing authority matrix, in the policy that the resolution would be approved. So, what it allows for is, from the various funds, to set these spending items. So, the general manager would have less spending authority, so 1,500, which is less than the 2,500 now. And then anything between 15 and 2,500 would require a board member signature. Anything in excess of $2,500 would require 2 board members. And then anything over 5,000 would have to go before the board of directors in a meeting to approve. And so, what that does is it establishes tiered controls that allow us to conduct business day to day, but it still has the controls in place. Okay.
So if the designee is not on there, then they can't do a signature card, so that's not a signer then?
Restate your question, please.
The fire designee that's in the resolution, does that no longer exist?
So yeah, it would be for the fire. So,
The way they set it up last time is that it was the chief and the assistant chief, which we all knew was Cliff and Shirley.
well, this would be the fire chief, and under this policy would be see, these are just details we have to work through. Under this policy, the fire chief for the fire fund would have essentially the same signing authority as the general manager. And the board of directors would have the same approval authority as with the other funds. And then the recreation funds, we want to rebuild those. So I would recommend that in this policy iteration that, the board of directors weighs in on this, expenditure on the recreation funds.
So did you just state earlier that you're the only one that can sign right now?
Yes, I'm the only one with an active signature card on the bank. That's why we need to pass this policy and get the board members as signers on the accounts.
Who's been paying your paycheck?
But where you have signers, just chair and vice chair, how often do you pay bills, if you could pay bills? Do you pay weekly, monthly?
I'm trying to get the district into a practice of weekly accounts payable. The other consideration about the amount and the timing is depending on what our meeting schedule is, we will have to call more and more special meetings to pay larger bills.
Right, but with your signers over there, just a suggestion to redo, is if it takes 2 board members, your signers should just be 2 board members. And if you're doing it once a week, I'm sure that there's at least 2 board members here. If we set a specific date, like to meet you on a Wednesday or Thursday, to not say you got checks to come into the office,
Yeah.
then it gives you 5 people to choose from versus 2 having to have to be here.
Oh, I see.
So that's what you're doing there when you limit your scope to just chair and vice chair. You're taking 3
But-
signatures away from helping you pay bills that week.
But I'm curious, who's paying his paycheck right now if he's the only signer?
I pay my paycheck.
That's illegal.
I don't think that's part of the
Decorum, Kathy.
So then we support the resolution of this matter.
as a possible solution, and I would love to have your input. I would love to have you guys available once a week to do an EAP run. That would be the best solution. Basically I've had Kelly, focusing on front desk support and customer relations Tuesday. Wednesday,
Oh, yeah, I got it.
She compiles deposits.
got it.
Make deposits on Wednesday if I'm able, and then we do AP on Thursday. We've been very behind, we're catching up. But it would, it will require,
And they don't
and
like
I
that.
think that's a great suggestion, Ron, is to move, to move it to board members, for, several of the tiers. And then, somebody's gotta come in Thursdays, or one day a week, or
But you
maybe.
could set out, like you did, you could send out an email and say, I'm paying, who's available, and let one of the 5 respond. Or you might get 3, 4 response where you've got more than your 2 that are here, so nobody's put out.
Well, the other thing, the banking system is set up to where you guys will just can have individual logins to authorize, payments that way. Obviously, you create writing checks is preferable in some ways, but it's a little slower.
It's trackable though.
It is, but this is just for your guys' consideration and discussion, and we need to set these policies because the previous general manager and leadership did not. And so this is basically just, based on my experience, you guys probably have, in your careers, the same sort of signing authority matrix that you encountered at the state or, the banking system. So, it's sort of new territory for this district, and we have to make some decisions. I mean, it's tough, because when they assumed the treasury from the county, they didn't handle it as responsibly, and, so I need to work with the chairperson, or one of you, or ideally through a committee, a finance and investment committee, to define these policies for the district, because we need to have them in place,
Yesterday.
from the, that's what the audits have called for, the state controller's guidance calls for it. Anyway, so, again, this is just a draft. I see a typo in there already, so I'll need to change it, but, just a draft, should be amended. You guys could direct me to make some changes.
Well, the only change that you might make is rather than just having, the 2 of us available for check signing, that someone else would be available too. Although most of us live here and are retired, so it's, I see you
Yeah.
probably almost every day that you're here, so.
Is there any preference for you to have all 5
How
of us
irresponsible
or
is
just
that?
2 of us?
You bring up good
So I had one of the first things that I identified when I got into office, before I was general manager, was that we were gonna start running into challenges like this. With paying our bills and then, a lack of controls, which I read in the audits and, things like that. So this policy I drafted a long time ago, just because I thought, and it's just taken a while to get before you guys, because I was like, why are we not doing business like normal, like other entities, So I drafted this, and then I want to thank Mr. Johnson for bringing the items to discussion, because they are basic the basic procedures that we follow and to function, and we need to discuss them, because they're not, coherent as they're currently written. So, what I did here was I tried to strike a balance between conducting day-to-day business, but having enough controls, in place, you know, and to have you just basically make sure you guys have approval authority. That being said, so I thought, so that's why I set it to, $200 to $1,500. I brought it down, the spending, authority of the general manager and the fire chief. If there's an administrative assistant, it would be great to have them be able to buy office supplies without, chasing me down, or to buy supplies for facilities. And so, like I said, I tried to just strike a balance here. It's just a draft, for you guys to consider. And it brings up the discussion point, because we're managing our own banking system, we have to use that system appropriately to its fullest use, because, the way that we stopped the wire fraud and the check fraud from, was to enroll in services that require initiators, approvers, at these different tiers. The other thing that I want to highlight is that, let's see about this, is sort of the terms around essential operating expenses, and namely this sort of authorized vendor list. So that would be to establish, what our operating expenses are and who those vendors are. So the website, energy, fuel, all the things that run the district day to day. We can set up electronic payments to them, but we have to, the bank requires us to authorize those first. We have to have this sort of authorized vendor list. So, with the banking system, we can sort of automate our day-to-day expenses, and then we're considering larger bills for professional services like the attorneys, engineers, hopefully, contractors, those sorts of things. But it's, again, they sort of, these policies didn't exist. And so, and then with the existing check signing policy, we have bottlenecks in terms of convening special meetings during the winter and, things like that. So, it's, and, it's not comfortable for me to be in this place where I don't have other signers. But we can't just stop paying Elma, or we can't just stop paying Ed Staub. And so that's sort of, you have to continue to run the organization and intervene, but we need to decide, there should have been a policy such as this presented alongside the resolution to withdraw the funds from the county treasury. Is sort of, so it's now up to, the six of us to establish these procedures that is gonna work for you all and allow me to conduct the day-to-day business and manage the regular funds responsibly.
It looks good, it's up to you if you wanna add extra signatures on it, I don't care. What the amount and stuff is, I think looks good.
Yeah. So I think maybe, this tier?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
similarly here?
Yeah.
So the way I wrote it is that, you know, there would be specific signers, as Glenn mentioned, and that's a constraint, but that's what we're doing, right? We're
Right.
establishing controls.
Right.
So you'll see that, you know, the distinction between or and, which is, you know, either the chair or the vice chair.
Right.
Versus, requiring both the chair and the vice chair. And if it's maybe more complex than we need, but, that's how I proposed it. And, you know, I would have, if it, and I apologize, I should have had this to you guys in the January meeting. This maybe should have been where we started. But, you know, there's time constraint. But, again, I wanna thank Mr. Johnson for, you know, bringing these concerns to light, because we do need to establish these basic procedures.
So if we establish this policy, we can amend it at any time if it's not working for us in the system, right?
Yeah. And I think it should mostly, again, trying to balance the flexibility and the control, so, for the most part, everything that the office sees is below that $1,500. And so, I haven't like done the math or averaged it out, but just offhand, I think that's probably sufficient. And yeah, you know, it's less authority for me, and not too concerned about that, more concerned that we have the policy in place.
I'd be willing to establish a policy.
Let's get going with it. If it doesn't work, then we can change it so that you can get it going.
Okay.
So you need a motion for that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I made the
So
motion.
you're keeping it just the way it is right here?
We'll try it that way.
I'm happy to, like I said, I'm happy to amend it. So, well, I guess one thing to note is like,
But then there goes another month or two that we don't have an extra signature, you know?
that's true. One thing is, functionally in the office under approver, you know, that would be purchase order, like signing the purchase order. So, yeah, so there's, you know, 3 signers between the purchase order and the issuance of payment.
Right.
You don't want to do anything until, I mean, the recommendation is to have all 5 of us be signers? Is that what you're saying?
I would say all 5 should be able to sign, but if the chair and the vice chair are here all the time, I don't have an issue with that either. But what happens when somebody's out of town, if you follow this metrics up here, this has got a problem. I just think all you'd have to do is to approve this today and the resolution is just, you're gonna change the resolution to, I would just put, instead of chair, vice chair, just put board member, period. And you can choose whatever, one, 2, 3, 4, 5 board members, it doesn't make a difference who comes in and signs. It's who, you know,
So that we're all authorized.
in a pinch, yeah,
If he needs it.
because if I'm on vacation, you're on vacation, or you happen to be downtown, what happens if Vince can't pay, we pay late fees. And late fees are usually double what the cost of the procedure is. That's all I mean, I have no problem with the dollar amounts. It's just that you're signing up there, if you just change that whole board down there, if you're gonna have to get board approval to start with, and then any of the board members should be able to come in and sign for you for your second check and balance. Which takes the stress off of you because you're not obligated for that large amount.
Yeah. Well, and just, yeah, the convenience of, you know, this winter, it'll sometimes be a challenge to get up the hill for payroll.
That's okay, it's not at their house.
You know,
It'd be nice to have somebody.
they barely like me. They barely like me. And so I'm trying to get a payroll, I guess.
I never would have done that.
Anyway,
So can we change the language of what you proposed already today, right this moment, so we can get going with
And
it?
get it approved.
And just make it, like I said, just generic, just board member,
Yeah.
and all 5 of us are approved to, as co-signers today.
Finally.
yeah,
Then we're making some progress.
yeah. We can,
Otherwise, it's tabled for another time, and then we still don't have anything.
okay, so you guys would like me to,
Change it to all board members for signatures.
Okay, I gotta
okay,
Any board.
see you guys later.
Why can't we just go ahead and put the general manager in and the chairman and vice chair? Good job. Double signature anyway.
I don't care. You don't want to be a signature at bank? Yeah, why aren't you a signature along with the chair and vice chair? That would give you 3.
well, for certain amounts,
Yeah,
anything above those certain amounts, I have to issue,
well, I think we should just change it to all board members can be the second, be the signatures, and, we can approve that today and get it going.
okay. Sounds good.
And you can arrange something with the bank where we just go in and see a certain person, just sign a card or whatever.
Okay, we can, I would like to do it that way, but, we have, so, because we're a municipality, we deal with a separate business line than the branch.
Oh.
So I tried to, remember
Oh, you're right, you tried to get me in there to sign before.
Couple times.
yeah, well, since I've been down, since I've chatted with them, since, they say, well, you're like a different business line than just what they do in the branch, I guess.
Oh,
So we should be able to do it here.
okay.
So, to get you all in the same room, to get you authorized to update the policy and then have it reflected in the bank policy, we have to do it at the next meeting or at a special.
We'll
at a
probably have a
special
special
meeting.
meeting, yeah, so we get it done. Okay.
So, I'm gonna amend the policy just to have board members, and then anything over 5,000 will require a vote by a, civil majority, I guess.
Okay. So we can go ahead and approve this now, and then you'll arrange the bank stuff, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd love to.
so I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay. Good deal, something done.
Kathy Clater,
Yes.
Larry Doss,
Yes.
Ellen Stallings,
Yes.
Glenn Johnson. Yes. Jerry Oliver.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. That was to approve, policy 3135, expense authorization as amended to, include, board members as signers across the board by resolution 2025, I think it's 5. I don't remember what resolution we were on. To approve the resolution.
2025, you're right.